Hey everybody, it's Eric from EPAutos.com, your libertarian car guy. And I thought I would talk a little bit this morning about something that has been in the news, which probably some of you have already seen. In Shanghai, China, a Tesla that was parked lit up on fire. Wasn't even moving. And the thing erupted into flames. I find this absolutely fascinating. I find it fascinating how indifferent the government is to the clear and present danger posed by electric cars, most of which have lithium-ion batteries, which are inherently more dangerous than gasoline. If they short circuit, it's something called thermal runaway, they spontaneously combust. Everybody has heard about the cell phones that have spontaneously combusted. It's exactly the same principle, only on four wheels, and you're in the thing rather than having it in your pocket. All sorts of elaborate measures have been taken with regard to transporting lithium-ion batteries by airplane to prevent an airplane from crashing as a result of a fire on board. But virtually nothing has been done to address the problem of people being burned to death in electric cars, which I find interesting because, after all, we live in the era of the safety cult, where every conceivable threat to our well-being is hystericized into an urgent mania for passing a law, restrictions, controlling whatever it is that could possibly harm us. But when it comes to electric cars, the government is remarkably laissez-faire. And I think the reason for that, of course, is pretty obvious, is that the government, and when I say the government, I really mean the busybodies and control freaks who constitute the government, because there is no such thing as the government. It's not like some entity floating out in space that has magical powers. It's just a bunch of people, relatively small number of people, who have titles and guns and who are interested in controlling us and making us do what they think we should do and not do. Anyway, the government is constantly interfering in our lives for our safety, to keep us safe, but is indifferent to the very unsafe electric car. And I think that the reason for that is that the government is very interested in pushing the electric car onto us, which I've talked about before and written about before. And so they give electric cars a pass. And you can see the same pattern when it comes to automated driving technology. You've had a number of incidents where automated cars have run people over, have killed people, have gone awry. But again, the government is remarkably laissez-faire about it, because the government is very interested in pushing automated technology down our throats. So it gives the lie to the prattle about safety. It's not about safety, it's about control. And when there's a conflict between control and safety, control always wins. And I'll tell you something else, or at least I'll give you my insight into something else. I'm absolutely certain that if and when the government succeeds in ramrodding these electric cars down everybody's throats, and people are no longer permitted to buy non-electric cars, or electric cars are no longer manufactured, or you just can't use them in IC no-go zones, the next turn will be that all of a sudden electric cars have a problem. They will be a threat to the environment because of their CO2 emissions, which are considerable, by the way. That's a whole nother rant. And also, of course, because, they're not very safe. A couple of people will burn to death. There'll be a concerned mob who testifies before Congress, and before you know it, there'll be restrictions on the electric car. And the reason is that the ultimate end goal of all of this is to control our mobility in order to control us. Everything else is window dressing, everything else is a Potemkin village, everything else is purely incidental. And once you understand that, everything else makes sense. If you don't get that, you're probably wondering and puzzling, it doesn't make sense, why are they not doing anything? Well, once you realize what the true agenda is, it makes perfect sense. It's entirely logical. So think about that and see whether it makes sense to you. I'll have more up on site at EPAutos.com shortly, and in addition to that, I'll hopefully finish the review of this really wonderful Mercedes E-Class sedan, which I very much like. And if I had the money to buy a high-end car, this would be on my short list, and I'll explain why that is in the review. At any rate, thanks again for viewing, and also thanks to everybody who stepped up and chipped in after my recent Googling. I got heavily redacted, or at least they wanted to heavily redact me, and of course they never explained exactly why I was to be redacted. And that article, if you missed it, is called White Spaces and Right Crime, and that's also up on the site. And if you hadn't had a chance, maybe swing by and have a look at it, see what you think, and please leave your comments. And if you have any questions about cars, politics, or any other thing that I might be able to be helpful with, please click on the Ask Eric button on the site, and I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Thanks again for viewing. We'll catch up with you again soon.